Time of the gentleman's expired. Gentleman yields back. The gentlelady from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to our witness for being here. I have an interest in several areas where it seems to me the FTC has been less than robust, and which maybe you can disabuse me of that notion. First, in the area of swipe fees. Visa and MasterCard have more than 83% of market share. This is, Congressman Gooden and I introduced the Credit Card Competition Act of 2023 to introduce competition. Our small businesses pay a higher swipe fee than people do in other developed nations, and I'm wondering whether the FTC will be having an active engagement in this area. I'm also concerned about the issue of consolidation in the grocery sector. These large companies have the power to secure preferential pricing and treatment from suppliers to the detriment of independent grocers. Now, recently, Mr. Tiffany and I led an appropriations request for $10 million specifically for FTC enforcement of the Robinson-Patman Act. I'm interested in what you can tell us about FTC and Robinson-Patman. I also have long been a champion of right to repair. Congressman Ice and I recently introduced a legislation to limit the enforcement period of design patents so that monopolies cannot prevent individuals from repairing their own what they own. The Nixing the Fix report was before your tenure, but I'm interested in what FTC is interested in doing in this area going forward. And finally, Congresswoman Eshoo and I introduced what I think is the toughest online privacy act that's ever been introduced in Congress. It simply prevents companies from collecting data so they cannot then use it to manipulate Americans. I'm interested in what actions the FTC is going to take to minimize data minimization, which I think is a key to data security, privacy, and also helpful in competition.
So on your first point, just a few months ago, the FTC announced an enforcement action against MasterCard. We alleged that there was a violation of the Durbin Amendment and that MasterCard had engaged in unlawful tactics to block competing networks and really stifle the competition that Congress has sought to encourage in this market back in 2010, because I think you're absolutely right. We still see fees that are much higher than what we see in sectors where you have more competition. Robinson-Patman and reinvigorating enforcement of it is a top priority. We've certainly heard from independent grocers about the ways in which differential treatment and discriminatory prices may be squeezing them and disfavoring them, making it difficult to compete, especially in parts of rural America. That's something that we're looking at closely. We also, several months ago, launched a market inquiry looking at supply chain disruptions and the degree to which that type of differential treatment may have contributed. On right to repair, this has been a big area of focus for us. In addition to the great staff report you mentioned, we also issued a policy statement. We followed up with several enforcement actions, including one against Harley-Davidson, one against Weber. Since then, we've also been working with state legislatures, several of whom are also considering right to repair legislation. Just the other month, one of our staffers went to California to testify before the state Senate there to give input and feedback on their legislative efforts in this area. So we're bringing our own lawsuits, but also looking to serve as force multipliers where other legislators are looking to be active. Ensuring robust privacy protections for Americans is a top priority. We've been extraordinarily active in this area, especially when it involves children's privacy. We brought an enforcement action against Epic Games because we found that certain lax privacy policies that they had in place were endangering children. We've also been looking at people's sensitive health information and instances in which companies are collecting health data for the purpose ostensibly of providing health services, but then are turning it around and making it available for advertising. And we're also looking at geolocation data. We have a lawsuit pending in Idaho against a data broker called Kochava, where we allege in our complaint that its practices allowed companies to track and get very sensitive geolocation information on consumers in ways that revealed whether they were going to church, whether they were seeking certain types of health services, whether they were seeking addiction recovery facilities, very sensitive data. So that lawsuit is still pending.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see my time has expired, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair recognizes himself. Madam Chair, why are you harassing Twitter?
Congressman, thanks for the question. As you might know, the FTC's work on Twitter goes back a decade. Back in 2009.
I'm not talking about a decade. I'm talking about now.
Back
12 demand letters in 10 weeks, over 350 separate requests you've demanded of Twitter.